Well, we've got through the first six teams and we have six to go as we bring you part two of our bumper A League women's season preview. It's Poletti here on the Dubcast and I am joined once again by Burke. Burke, how are you today?
I'm good. Yeah, in another location with another pet that is not mine, as usual it seems for me. But yeah, I'm doing good. The Didn't get to catch the games in real time, but did did watch or caught up as much as I could later because those time zones heinous.
Yeah, I mean, it's worth getting up at 4 a.m., but it's also not worth getting up at 4 a.m. I found. Um, Although to be fair, had I gotten up at 4 a.m., I this is when I watched the replay this morning. I was still half asleep, and then oh my god, Kyra Cooney Cross, what the did you just do? Like, oh my gosh, like that just would have bolted me awake at like 4:40 a.m. or whenever it was. Like, oh, absolutely unbelievable stuff. And we'll get into that with our Tilly's chat when it happens. But first, we have the small case of our season preview to get to, and we'll get to that shortly because, full disclosure, we did one giant long recording session last week, and there's been a couple of signings, which, of course, because why not? It's Dub Heritage. And we think the most important one to give a brief look at is Sheridan Gallagher is back in the A League. Burke, this came out of nowhere.
Yeah, I'm really surprised. I thought she was committing to the NRL women's. So yeah, I was a bit shocked that she has come back, but I'm very happy to see her back. Yeah, because she was just with what team was it? Newcastle NRL women's Newcastle Knights, and I wonder what
It was the
they've.
Newcastle Knights. Yes.
Yeah, I wonder what the Jets have done to bring her back. Like, I wonder what it was that convinced her. I'd love to find out. But yeah, no, I'm very very excited to see what she'll be bringing to the table. I'm guessing a lot of we know it'll be a lot of physical football, but I'm very excited to see it again.
Yeah, no, I absolutely think it's going to be great. I thought that she was one of those players who was just once she crossed codes, that was it. She was going to be lost to
Yeah.
football, and I think a lot of us thought the same thing. I will read you out Marissa's tweet since she can't be here to give us her thoughts. I high key love this. Sheridan was killing it in NRLW, which I think pretty much sums it up. I think this is a good move. She's having She's in great try scoring form in the NRLW. I caught a few of her games for the Knights. She's killing it, absolutely killing it. Former young Matildas captain. I don't quite know how the transition back into league is going to go. I imagine there'll be back into league, back into football is going to go. I imagine there'll be some sort of slight adjustment period. I don't think we'll see a start this weekend for the Jets. I imagine it'll probably be 15, 20 minutes off the bench, and that'll be the first couple of weeks before she gets back into it. But at least we know she doesn't have to worry about match fitness because NRL a lot more physical of a game than what football is. So she can get tackled and make tackles and sprint down the sideline for 70 minutes. I have no doubt that she'll be able to get through a 90-minute game of football, Burke.
Absolutely. I mean, I wonder if it will have meant she's more like sturdy. Well, definitely, actually. So yeah, I doubt there'll be too many injury struggles for her, given if she's survived the NRL women's. Coming back to this will probably be a lot easier on her body.
It will be indeed, and I think they're going to need some of that goal scoring prowess up front with some of their departures, which we'll get into now as we bring you part two of our A League Women preview. And we'll fly over to Newcastle now as to kick off our part two of our preview, the final six teams we need to get through. Sixth place last season, their first finals appearance since the 2017-18 season, and just their third overall, with their only other appearance coming in the inaugural season in 2008-2009. New owners, that situation's finally sorted. Are there new expectations at the club? Ryan Campbell's now the full-time coach, just the second in the long list of coaches who will now have their first crack for a full-time job with their squad. No Bolden, no Ayres for vastly different reasons. Can they make finals again? I don't quite know what to make of how the Jets are going to turn out, Burke.
Yeah, it'll be interesting, I think. They've still got a lot of their, the players that you'd recognize. I wonder if we're going to see, like, a random Van Egmond stint again. Because I always find that so funny how she just pops up for like 4 weeks to go on holiday and then just goes back to the US. But I think the loss of Bolden and Ayres, both for their very different reasons, are going to be felt really hard, really hard, because they both seemed very capable of making something happen out of absolutely nothing, out of a negative even. And yeah, they're going to really, really miss that. But I think it'll be good for them to have a full season with their coach. I think that'll probably make a difference for them. I hope it'll make a difference for them. I don't again, I don't see why they couldn't make finals, especially considering it's the 6 team finals. But again, this is the A League women. You just don't know. You just don't know.
It is. It is indeed. So Melina Ayres is taking personal leave from football. We wish her all the best with whatever she's dealing with and hope that she comes back ready to play whenever she feels ready to come back. Serena Bolden, contract release, I want to say off the top of my head, or was it a direct transfer? I don't remember, but she's playing in Italy at the moment. So I'm disappointed we don't get to see more of Serena Bolden, but to go from being a 5 round in signing and getting robbed of player of the season, in my opinion at least, I thought she was robbed, to, commanding an overseas transfer, I think is just absolutely amazing for Bolden. Much like the victory, they've kept a huge chunk of their squad together, like Cass Davis, Emma Dundas, Claudia Chico, Sophie Hoban, Nat Tash Pryor, Milan Hammond, Libby Copus Brown, Tiana Robertson, Lorena Bauman, Josie Wilson, Josie Allen, Chloe Willandau, Lara Gooch. Like, they've kept so much of their squad together that, I find it hard to believe that they won't at least be competing for a top 6 spot, Marissa.
I don't see it. And I'm so sorry to the Newcastle Jets. If they want to post this transcript up in their dressing rooms, go for it. I will happily eat the paper once you prove me wrong. But at the moment, I just, losing Bolden was bad enough. Got to interview her. She is phenomenal, and I am stoked that, she's just going to take Italy by storm and just kind of continue being a phenomenal player, phenomenal person. Stoked. But obviously, selfishly, you want to keep watching her here. But I was like, all right, at least they still have Ayres. And then obviously, Ayres is no longer playing. And I just think very, very instructive, the Melina Ayres quote in the club statement: after 9 consecutive back-to-back seasons, I've decided to take a break from football to reflect on the future. And that's, NPL seasons in amongst all of the dub seasons. And if I may go right off the deep end, I have a sticky note on my laptop because I saw a tweet from someone last year asking why hasn't Melina Ayres got a look in for Tilly's. So I went and I looked and I researched. So after the 2020-2021 season, where she played every single game in a grand final winning season, scored 8 goals. Everyone was like, she's no longer only scores worldies. She's here. She's had her breakout season. She then went on to play 4 games the next season, had 3 different hamstring issues over that season, once in preseason, twice in season. The following season, she played 13 out of 20 games and had a hamstring injury that kept her out of 7 games between December and February. So just huge chunk of season gone. And then last season, concussion kept her out until February and she missed all of November. So again, she's just had such a rough run of injuries. So in between the grind of having to play year-round football in 2 competitions, plus your body not cooperating, nothing has made more sense than Melina being like, I'm just going to take however long, I'm going to surf, I'm going to chill, I'm going to walk around Newcastle. I know she's big on environmentalism, so I would love to see if, maybe that turns into a passion project from her for her off the pitch. But whatever she decides to do, I'm kind of just really stoked that she's going to take a break and hopefully rest and recharge. But yeah, the proposition was daunting with no Bolden, but at least you still had Ayres. No Ayres and no Bolden. I'm like, sorry to the Jets, but it's no finals are happening this season.
I think that is a very fair, reasoned approach to take. I thought you were going to bring up a completely different tweet, and so I thought, I'm very glad you didn't. So, look, for me, I think the Jets will be in and around the conversation, but as we know in this competition, a bad start to the season, and even with an extended season, a bad start to the season, and you can almost rule yourself out by round 5, sadly. But we also know that if you make a great start to the season, you can also miss finals, and I think that takes us to Perth Glory from last season. They started like a house on fire, and then fell away drastically. They won 4 of their first 6 games. Memory serves me off the top of my head, and I thought the coming out party for Perth Glory was after having been on the periphery of finals so long, missing out on goal difference, missing out by a single point, that Alex Aparkas had finally clicked with this side and that it was going to happen. And it was a 3-1 win over Melbourne City that just sort of no, this is where it's coming. This has happened. And then they went on an absolute horror run of form after that, finished in 10th. New owners coming into Perth, new coach in the former Macarthur Rams head coach, Stephen Peters, another NPL New South Wales women's veteran, much like Aparkas was. And he's let a lot of people leave, brought in a lot of his own players, is very much looking like a Stephen Peters squad with less limitations than he had to deal with in the NPL Women's New South Wales competition. I think that I look at Stephen Peters and I see a coach who can very much take this side to the promised land. He might not do it immediately, but this is very much going to be a long-term project where the signs will be there from day one that he's going to get this side cooking. I look at, he's brought Naomi Chinema in. Ella Abdul-Masi is someone I've absolutely loved watching for NWS Spirit last season. Rocket free kick taker. Just showing bits and pieces of the Wanderers as well. You've got Tijan McKenna, Ishia Brooking, Kelly Brown coming in as well. Megan Wynn, Jess Skinner, Casey DeMont, Miku Sanaga, who I'm very happy to see step up. She had an absolute rocket of a season for the Macarthur Rams, as did Kelly Brown as well. I spoke to Kelly Brown after the back-to-back-to-back NPL Women's Championship, and I asked her, why she wanted to follow Stephen Peters to Perth, and we'll play that audio for you now.
You're following your coach over to Perth Glory. What is it about Stephen Peters that just makes you want to play for him as a coach?
He's just such a genuine person. I've never had a coach that has so much belief in me, and I'm super grateful for how much he's helped me pursue my career and pick me up when I'm down. So, yeah, why would you give that up?
And I think what's stood out to me in that quote is, why would you want to give that up? Just the absolute praise that, she's heaped on Peters there, and just the idea of wanting to follow a coach halfway around the country after having been in New Zealand last season for the Wellington Phoenix just speaks to the absolute relationship that, Stephen Peters develops with his players. And I don't know about you two. I don't know how much NPL Women's New South Wales you watch, but I am very excited to see Stephen Peters at the Perth Glory.
I'm excited about it. I think it's very interesting that a lot of the new coaches in the dub have come from the NPLW New South Wales. I think it's obviously a very it's a great endorsement of what's happening in that league. And it was really funny just listening to you speak about that. I was like, damn, you could have been talking about Alex Aparkas 3-4 years ago. There are scary similarities and parallels between these two beyond just kind of being plucked from the NPLW New South Wales. And as much as I like, or in much the same vein that I wanted Alex Apakis to do well, I do hope Stephen Peters does well here as well. I cannot profess to know as much as you about the NPLW New South Wales, but we know just, how many players are playing their trade in the off season in that competition. It is a strong competition. And if you have the ability to kind of cultivate those relationships with players where they will follow you across the country, that's only a ringing endorsement of what you're doing. So I'm very excited to see what Perth can do, and if they can return to finals, because it does feel like it's been a while, and I hope my memory's not betraying me there, in terms of them playing finals. I'm not to be glass half empty, but I am looking at the outs, and I'm just looking at Tash Rigby retiring. That's huge, not just from the football, but from the leadership perspective, from a culture's perspective as well. Just like, that's a woman you want in your dressing room kind of guiding the team. So I think her loss is going to be felt immensely. Morgan Aquino as well. Apparently killing it over in the US, has kept like 3 clean sheets, is league leading for saves over for DC Power. So stoked that she's got that opportunity. And I'm sure we'll talk about it kind of in this section and in the next session, but just Hannah Lowry finally leaving Perth, sucks for Perth, but I really hope it's kind of a moment for her, but I'm probably getting ahead of myself there. But yeah, just those 3 losses, I'm like, I hope you can kind of cover those gaps, because they feel big.
Yeah, no, they absolutely do. And just before we move on from Perth, I was asked a few months ago by a mutual friend that we all share, and I don't know if I can share who it is and what they were asking for. But asked me what I thought about Stephen Peters in terms of how they set up and how they play, and asked for a direct one-to-one comparison. And I'm just like, I can't really come up with one, but I was able to give this massive spiel here. So they usually set up with a back 4. He rotates between a midfield 4 and a midfield 3, depending on how the opposition presents itself. Like a lot of sides, they balance playing out from the back with hoofing it into midfield. He's very tactically flexible as a coach, a great player manager based on the different players I've spoken to who have played under him, and I think that speaks to the Kelly Brown quote as well. His in-game management is great, from knowing when to make his substitutions to try and get the best out of his side and giving them the best chance to win if a game is still in the balance, or to see out a victory. And Burke, I think for Perth, that's going to speak volumes as to how he's going to get the best out of his side, is just the tactical flexibility, the relationship that he can develop with players, and just everything that he brings.
Yeah, I think the relationship that he'll have with the players is definitely going to be a strong point for them, because there's really nothing better to watch than a team that wants to run through a wall for their head coach. And if they're already willing to go to Perth, no offense to Perth, but if they're willing to go all the way to Perth, there's no limit really to where they'll go. If you've got them there, you've done pretty much all the work, haven't you? And I think there's still a lot of young players in this squad. Chinema's pretty young. There's the return of Isabella Wallhead. She was out all of last season, but I'm really glad to see her back in. I think she's a phenomenal young defender. I watched a lot of her when she played for Heidelberg United in NPL Victoria. And Tiana McKenna, of course, as well, very young. So I think hopefully if he can live up to what you're saying he does, Poletti, then it should be a really great season for the young players as well, as Perth in general.
And then just before we move on to Sydney FC, Casey Dumont, still with Hawthorn. And apologies for the Sharon violation here, but I think it is a discussion that we sort of have to have. They've just qualified for finals in the AFL Women's Series, so it could still be a few weeks before she's able to join Perth, and the season starts in 2 weeks. How does that dynamic, and I'll come to you, Marissa, as one of the experts for ESPN on the AFL Women's competition, how does that dynamic play into her arrival with Perth?
Well, that's the thing. I think it's we assume that's why she's no longer at the Mariners, that they weren't willing to kind of wait for her. That's the assumption I'm making. They weren't willing to wait for her to finish her footy commitments. And so it was just about finding a club that are willing to wait for her to finish those commitments. And I think the thing is, we know what you get from a Casey Dumont. So it really is like, I don't want to wait like a month, but then you think about how she performs in shootouts in finals, how clutch she comes up, you know, in the last minutes of games when you need a big save made to hold on to 3 points, hold on to a point. Like, we know what she can do. So I'm not surprised that like another club has said, yes, we are willing to wait for you to do this. And yeah, I just think the other thing, or the flip side of that coin, is just very much that Casey really enjoys like playing footy. I had a chat to her, I think it was before her first season, so she had just been doing pre-season, and she was like, I love it. I'm like, I've never played footy before. She grew up on the Gold Coast, so very north of the Barassi line. No footy experience whatsoever. But she's like, I'm loving the different kind of sport. So I think the other element of that is keeping a player happy by allowing her to have this kind of other sport, this other career. So yeah, like I said, it's a juggle that obviously she has to undertake, because I'm pretty sure she's also working her regular day job in amongst all of this sport. So yeah, it requires, I assume, a lot of communication, a lot of compromise, and just all parties to be happy with what they're ultimately getting. And it seems like Perth Glory are happy with what they're getting at the moment.
Yes, the glorious life of professional women's athletes, or semi-professional, I should say. No one is professional in this country, unfortunately. And if you feel violated by the amount of Sharon violations in this across these A-League Women season previews, you may be entitled to compensation. Please note the compensation is void worldwide. We'll move on now to Sydney FC, where they finished second last season. They needed a win on the final day to claim first from City and the Asian Women's Champions League spot, and then fell 4-0 to the Melbourne Victory on the final day of the season, an absolute bloodbath, which we touched on in the last episode. They are the back-to-back champions. They're going for 3 straight championships this season. No Courtney Vine, no Charlotte McLean, no Jada Wyman, no Taylor Ray. Those are the big standouts of players that have exited. Faye Bryson, Kaya Simon, Brianna Edwards, Hannah Lowry, Millie Farrow, Ruby Sullivan, and Amber Luchtmeyer highlight the ends for me. I don't quite like. If there's one thing we've seen from Ante Juric, is that he has the ability to just pick random names from out of nowhere. Almost like if you hadn't seen these players in the NPL Women's New South Wales, you'd think they were creator players, where he just plucks them out of absolutely nowhere. They come in and they absolutely do the job that they're supposed to, and they go on to do great things. And he's done that throughout his entire tenure at Sydney FC. And so I hope Ruby Sullivan and Amber Luchtmeyer can benefit from that as well. I really like the inclusion of Brianna Edwards. Much like when we mentioned Grace Wilson with Adelaide United, another one who left said team after I got customization on the back of a jersey. But I'm very happy she's at Sydney. I think she'll do well in the Sydney FC system. We saw how well Jada Wyman was able to do in that system, and I think for Brie Edwards, if you watch her, she's sort of just missing that final piece to her game where she's not always in the right position. I think back to a goal that she conceded for the Illawarra Stingrays in the NPL Women's New South Wales this season to Manly United from Alexia Carastal, where Carastal absolutely hoofed it from 40 metres out, and Edwards was just so far off her line that she had absolutely no chance to get back to it, and just banged the post in frustration when it crossed the line. That like she was angry at herself, and I think if she can add that piece to her game, just being in the right positions at the right time, I think she's going to go on and do fantastic things. And it wouldn't surprise me if in the next couple of years, and I'm not going to pretend like I'm an expert on the New Zealand keeper situation, but she will find a way to crack into the national team and be in and around that conversation. I think the fact that she's not with Wellington anymore surprised me a lot. I thought, with the Lily Allfeld situation, she stepped up, and then Riley Foster came in, took the starting job. Bree Edwards looked good when she came in, and then Riley Foster left, and it's like, okay, this is Bree Edwards' team, and then Edwards left, and it's like, okay, I'm not quite sure what's happening in Wellington there, but Edwards has found a home. I think she'll do quite well at Sydney FC, I should say. I mentioned this as well. Ante Juric has signed for Sydney United to coach their men's side. Where is their men's side playing? Who knows? Is it the NST? Is it NPL New South Wales men's? No one seems to know at this point. That's a conversation for a different point in time. But I think he's done this before with Sydney Olympic, but the NPL New South Wales men's season was a little bit shorter, as was the A-League women's season. The A-League women's season was only 14 games the last time that Ante Juric was doing multiple roles, as well as his day job, and he almost walked away from Sydney FC at that point in time, and eventually walked away from the Sydney Olympic job. And now he's going back. The demands that come with coaching two sides, it's a 30-round competition plus finals in the NPL New South Wales men's competition. If it's a national second tier, we know that Football Australia wants it to be fully professional competition. So how much time would he actually have for Sydney FC? Does he leave halfway through the season? Is he distracted? I really just don't like this at all. I think the time for juggling two jobs is over. The advantage is that it's in the same city, but I really don't like this move. I think this is going to have very negative impacts on Sydney FC, and I think that if the Sydney United job is something that he wants, which he clearly has because he's signed, that this might be the last season that we see him at the helm of Sydney FC. I'd like to say they're going to compete for silverware. I already think, they're one of the top two, which we've already mentioned, but I look at this Sydney United job as a big red flag that's just going to be a massive distraction come the key end of the season, because the competition finishes in April, the NPL New South Wales men's kicks off in February. There's one midweek round before you even get to the grand final. So you've got preseason trials, you've got scouting, you've got signing, you've got all of these massive things that go into a club like Sydney United, and you're supposed to be coaching a women's competition as well. I don't like it. That's my verdict. I don't like it. Marissa?
I think it probably speaks to, and I think he's actually been quite strong on this, and I'm not 100% sure if it's still the case, so again, please send your complaints to my Twitter. We said that Adrian Stenter was the only full-time coach in the A-League Women. Ante Juric has been very vocal about that fact and about how hard it is for the players, but for coaches as well, because you do have to juggle multiple jobs. So very Libra of me not to get all astrology, but I see, if he's offered a full-time professional football coaching job and that's what he wants to do, I do see why he would attempt to juggle the two things, because we know how much he loves Sydney FC. He has spoken about it every opportunity he gets. He loves this team. He loves these girls. So I'm choosing to look at it as he's being offered something that he currently can't get from Sydney FC, because as I understand it, he's not the full-time head coach of Sydney, or he is not on a full-time contract, you know what I mean? People get then pedantic, what do you mean? He is full-time. I'm sure he's giving full-time effort. It's not full-time pay. You know what I mean? Anywho, quick digression there from me. Yeah, so it's hard. The juggle's hard. We saw how hard it is with Mark Torcaso having to give up Western United to pursue the Philippines women's national team coaching job full-time, and that's, on a global scale, because it was in two different continents. So it's the juggle is hard, and if that's what he's gonna be doing at the back end of the Dub season, then good luck to him, because it's we know it's tough. We know how tough it is on the players, and the coaches are very much in that same boat. But yeah, if this is his opportunity to get an actual full-time coaching gig, which there are not many in Australian football, we know just full-time gigs, whatever section of Australian football you want to work in, there aren't many. So yeah, that's my take on it. I understand though, like, especially coming from a Sydney FC fan, feeling like, oh, have we drawn the short straw with our coach bailing? Like, I completely understand that point of view as well.
Burke, you got any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think if anything, it feels a little embarrassing that we have technically one full-time head coach in the entire league in the year of our Lord 2024, almost 2025. It's not a good look. But yeah, like, I agree with everything Marissa said in that, yeah, it makes sense that he would want a full-time paying job. I mean, in this timeline, who doesn't want a full-time paying job in the profession that they want to pursue? Like, I get it. I would also like a full-time job in the profession. I would like.
I would as well.
If they're out there, please, someone let me know. Someone let us know, actually. But yeah, I get that, but it does, it sucks. It sucks. I think the Sydney squad looks very promising, just to go back to the actual squad. I think
There's football to talk about in all of this?
yeah, it's crazy, but there is. The loss of Courtney Vine is big in a sense that you lose a really powerful marketing tool. But I think losing McLean is possibly actually bigger for the Sydney squad. Hopefully we get to see the return of Nat Tobin after her ACL injury. I hate that. I hate that stupid little ligament. Oh my God. And I don't even like Sydney FC. But yeah, I think seeing her come back will be really good. I think Hannah Lowry, like we were saying, like you were mentioning earlier, I really want this to be her season. I want this to be her season where she's really good, because she has been consistently quite good, but with a team that lets that be shown in a more positive light than what she may have been in before. I think, yeah, she's a very exciting young player. So I hope we get to see good things from her, from a successful team, which Sydney historically has been, as much as it pains me to say it. Yeah, I think, yeah, Sydney will have a good season.
I think one of the big pressing questions with Sydney FC, and we seem to ask this same question every single year, is how do they fit everyone into their starting 11? Like, someone is inevitably going to miss out, and I just, I don't know who's going to miss out this year. That's going to feel very hard done by, but, it's just, it's going to be a fascinating thing. And I wonder if Ante knows who is his best 11, or, if he's just going to decide the morning of round one and just be like, okay, yep, this is who I'm starting, this is who's going, because everyone knows the role that they need to play, and that we'll find out basically at the same time that he figures it out. I think that's going to be fascinating.
He's going to be throwing darts at a dartboard. He's just going to have all the players' names up there and be like, all right, whoever these 11 hit, that's who's on. Everyone else, tough luck.
Amazing. I love it.
I think that's a good time to move on to Wellington. The first season, they've had the same coach return for a second season after 3 coaches in their first 3 seasons. So Paul Temple, once again, comes back. Marissa's shaking her head. I don't know why.
When I read that, when you sent me the rundown, I went, no, surely not. And then I went and looked on Wikipedia. And I'm like, oh, damn, they've literally never had a coach for 2 seasons. So I'm shaking my head at just the absurdity of that stat. Please continue.
No, that's fair. They won 4 out of their first 6 games before falling away and ultimately missing out on finals last season in 8th place. I recall Sam Lewis saying on, I want to say it was the Far Post podcast, and Marissa, you might be able to remind me of this, I don't know, that after season 1, when they got battered pillar to post every week, that while it was tough for them, it was going to be a side that would become contenders in just a few short seasons because they're the only side in New Zealand. The idea of galvanizing an entire nation into this one team before Auckland was even thought of. But, the idea of galvanizing an entire nation together into this one professional women's football team, is this the year that they contend for finals, or is 8th into the top 6, top 4 too much of a stretch for this Wellington side?
I'm not going to put words in Sam's mouth, but I am going to bounce off what she said.
Sorry, just quickly, I should say that was paraphrased because I don't remember the exact quote.
Yeah.
I couldn't even go back and find it if I tried.
I was going to say, we talk a lot on the Far Post, so I wouldn't recommend going back through episodes. I had to do that recently. I was like filing all of the audio files and stuff. We yap. God almighty. Anywho, to answer the question, if from memory, like you said, that was the season 1 quote, I feel like the constant changes of coaches have meant that they've never actually been able to like make good on a statement like that because they've always kind of been starting again. And yes, for the most part, over the first few seasons of their existence, they've kept a core squad together. So you'd think that they would be able to sort of develop. But yeah, I still think they're a little way away from like championship contender. And I think this season, it's the fact that yes, they've kept the coach, but the squad overhaul has been huge. Like I'm looking at the transfer page on the A-League's website and the outs, it's just like, here are all your favourite Wellington Phoenix players. It's Macy Fraser, it's Grace Wisniewski, it's Hope Breslin, it's Kate Taylor, it's Kelly Brown, it's Mariana Speckmeyer, beg your pardon, your Riley Fosters, your Michaela Foster, your Michaela Robertson. Like, these are the players that you assumed would be part of this hypothesised Wellington title fighting side, and now they're all just gone. So I'm like, where do Wellington kind of go from? Like, they're starting from scratch again, it feels like, and I'm really concerned is too strong, but I'm just like, I don't think, like, I think a finals berth would be a surprise. I really feel like they're kind of needing to start from scratch again, and I don't know how they're going to go with that.
Burke, what do you think? Is that too much of a stretch to make the top 6?
I mean, a lot of the like players that they've picked up / like promoted have been like scholarship players. So I love that the players that they're signing and the players that they want to put forward are Kiwi. Like I think it's awesome that they're New Zealand players coming through. But they all seem very, very young as well. So it seems like this season, a lot of it will be like cutting their teeth kind of thing for a lot of them. One like interesting sort of departure was Vandermeer, because she had signed a new contract, but then almost immediately did her ACL. So her contract's actually been terminated. So I'm very curious as to what like she's meant to do now. How like who's paying her? Does she have to get a job while she has no ACL? Like what interesting, awful situation there. But there is an end goal of her returning in 2025-26 for the Knicks. The outs list is very long. Like it almost is like reading it is like it's never going to end. They've lost all of their Michaelas. They've lost all of their Fosters. Like, they've got nothing. What's left? They do still have Emma Main, though. So the main train will continue running. There are just going to be a lot of new faces on it. Considering the number of new faces, just kind of echoing what everyone's already said. They are, probably... I don't imagine them being in the final series. I think it'd be really fun if they were, but I don't see it happening, especially considering how many of the players are kind of new to the league. When you're faced with like eons of experience, it's hard to match up, even if you're bringing something fresh to the table.
I would love to see the Knicks host a final at Paroa Park. I think just the vibe would be absolutely off the charts and exactly what the finals need. As you've both said, that list of outs is absolutely massive. The list of ins, I look at it and see a lot of scholarship players. So hopefully, with all the youngsters coming in, that the Wellington Phoenix will be able to rise from the ashes and compete for finals in 2024-25. We'll move on now to Wonderland in Sydney's West. The Wanderers finished 7th last season, missing out on goal difference because, what do you know, they were tied on wins, so goal difference had to be the tiebreaker. The system works. Much like Brisbane, this will be the first full season in charge for Robbie Hooker after taking over from Cat Smith on the eve of the season. We're not going to go into that. I think that's been covered as best as it can ad nauseum, including on such wonderful podcasts as the Far Post Pod. There's been a big, and I've used the term clear out here, but I put it in quotation marks in the rundown because when you look at the players who have left, it's a lot of who has made up the core in recent years. So Alexia Apostolakis, Vicky Bruce, Malia Morris, Beth Gordon, Melissa Caceres, Indy Breyer, and Lauren Keir, who's retired. I think much like Stephen Peters, much like Alex Smith, is very much going to look like a Robbie Hooker squad of what he wanted had he had more time last season to actually bring in the players that he wanted. I recall saying last year, especially with the late coaching change, I wasn't expecting a lot from the Wanderers, especially after Serena Bolden wasn't offered a contract. And then week after week after week, it was just like, they're proving me wrong. They're playing good football. They're doing well. They're on the verge of the top 6. And every week I sounded like a fool. Just being like, is this the week they're going to drop off? Is this the week they're going to drop off? Much like the Melbourne victory. And then they just kept on going. And they never really dropped off. I hope that they don't prove me right a year later. Because I would like to see the Wanderers take that next step. And Burke, is this the season that they actually make finals?
I mean, I hope so. It'd be a bit grim if they didn't. They've, like you've said, they've turned over a lot of players. Most surprising to me was losing Apostolakis and Vicky Bruce. I think she was really big for them last season and has been prior, but yeah, the loss of her was surprising to me. They still retained a lot of core players: Amy Harrison, Libby Price, Kush LaRue, Sophie Harding. Always good to keep your Julie Dolan medal winners on side. Not a good look if you immediately lose them. But yeah, they still have a lot of core players that are gonna do really good work for Western Sydney. It's kind of a case of if they're going to be able to make all of the new players fit, kind of thing. At least to me, I don't see why they couldn't make finals, but I also I don't know if they will.
Marissa?
I think, and maybe this is too much pressure to be putting on Sophie Harding's shoulders, but I feel like if she can back up her goal scoring form, that makes me feel more confident about Western Sydney doing well again, because I feel like that's kind of the vibe we had. Not to go all the way back to Adelaide, but after they had that great season, they made the finals, you were like, okay, if a Fiona Wirtz can come back and back it up, if your Hodgsons can stick around, if all these players can kind of come back and do what they did again, why can't they be playing finals again? So I feel like if Sophie Harding can continue to score goals, that's half the battle. I'm really keen to see how they set up if they continue they had from memory, they had the back three that was back 5 years well, and that was kind of an interesting tactical kind of decision, like if that's something they persist with these new faces, or if it's kind of, no, we've got to rework the formation with these new names. But yeah, I think without putting the entire buck on Sophie Harding, if she can continue to score goals, I feel better about their chances than I feel worse, if that makes sense.
No, that absolutely does make sense. I think they'll make finals. I think they're going to go on with it, and they're finally going to live up to the lofty expectations that have been placed on them by many Dub observers. We made it. The end. We're going to Western United. Where are they west of? No one still seems to know. Third last season in the competition. The third last season in the competition. This will be their third year in the competition. Runners-up in the first year for both pieces of silverware. They hit the ground running from year one, in part because of their relationship with Calder United, who were relegated to EPL 1, I want to say is the name of the competition. I don't know if they can recapture their first season form under Kat Smith, who, again, first full season in charge. He took over for Mark Ducato last year, who departed for the Philippines women's national team after initially trying to juggle both roles. My big thought here is that outside of the big three, which is City and Sydney, and then Victory, as we've already touched on, Western United look like the squad to compete for silverware because since they've come into the competition, that's the spot they've been in. Great recruitment, some good re-signings. The departures hurt, but they will be well replaced. Like, I like the idea, Chloe Lincoln coming in, Sasha Grove, Alana Cordolino, Sarah Eggersvik, and I apologize if I've pronounced that name wrong. I probably have. But then they're out. Hannah Keane, Stacey Papadopoulos, Jacqueline Savicki, Emma Rovers, TJ Vlanich. There's some big shoes to fill, isn't there, Burke?
Yeah. I think if anyone can do it, like if anyone has the capability of, filling these spots, it is Kat Smith. I think she's really good as a head coach, and I think she does a great job of signing like players that you don't expect. I think the kind of the poaching from Bulleen Lions in getting Cordolino Mihotic, is that how you say it? So sorry if I've said that wrong. And DeHarkers will be really good for them because you're getting players that already have a working relationship with each other. You don't have to waste time trying to build that in training. Like you can just put them down and be like, okay, off you go. And they know what to do. They've done it before. I'm very excited to see Sasha Grove somewhere other than Canberra because she's kind of been there the whole time. Massive loss for Canberra. I think she was quite a fan favourite as well there, but she'll probably have no trouble becoming a fan favourite for Western. I really like how tenacious she is, and I think Western fans will like that too. I think she probably could have quite a bit to learn from a Chloe Lagazzo, if that makes sense. I feel like they both have a similar sort of work ethic. They're both quite a workhorse. So I think it'd be very interesting to see if or what Sasha Grove can learn from Lagazzo. And obviously Chloe Lincoln's a big grab considering she's been sort of touted as the next big young player for a goalkeeper in women's football in Australia. The losses are, like you said, Poletti, pretty big, but they haven't been lost to football entirely, I don't think. So that's, I guess, still a good thing. But yeah, you're definitely right in saying that Western could contend. They still have players like Carly Johnson and the Tarantos who've always made trouble for everyone else. And I don't imagine they'll be doing any less this season. So I don't see why they can't, challenge for silverware. And I hope they do, just to keep things interesting. Not that they win, because that wouldn't be right in my heart. But I do hope that they challenge, just, keep things fun, keep it fresh,
I think back to the first time I consciously saw Sasha Grove. It was for an NPL Women's New South Wales game that I was commentating on the Illawarra Stingrays. And, like, I'd been around women's football a little bit at this point. But, like, because she's a defender, I wasn't at the point where I was actively looking and scouting and observing all the different players in all the different parts of the pitch. And so the first time I got the call, I'm like, who is this player? And then, I almost like immediately fell in love with the way she plays the game. Just everything that she does is fantastic on the pitch. And so, like, I've kept a very keen eye on her since watching her play for Canberra United as well. Just seeing her continue to grow, week on week, year on year. And I think that this is very much the next logical progression with her. And there was a piece that I did just around the launch of Round Ball Australia website. So if you go onto the website, you search Sasha Grove, you'll be able to find that piece where she talked about the move to Western United, and it very felt like a logical step for her to go to Western United. And, Grace Maher, she has a good relationship with from her days at Canberra United. Chloe Lincoln's gone as well. So, like, she's not going to be in entirely unfamiliar surroundings. And Chloe Lincoln caught up for the Matildas in this current international window. I imagine the third choice goalkeeper behind Jada Wyman and Mackenzie Arnold. We talked on episode 1 about, this Matildas squad for the November-December international window. If I don't see Sasha Grove's name on, like, that 35 player list, because I imagine it's going to be a massive list across the 4 games. I think even if you just bring her into camp as a train-on player, like, I think she's at the point where she's ready to take the next step up, Marissa.
Yeah, 100%. Like we said earlier, it's about, like, that window. Once we figure out who's coaching that window, I feel like we can properly place our expectations on what that window should be. But yeah, 100% it should be just like, we're here in Australia, let's give some players a go, let's test the waters for a whole bunch of players, and Sasha Grove is absolutely in that conversation. You'd think that Chloe Lincoln as well would kind of then be further up the pecking order, having had at least one camp under her belt, so that'll be interesting. But yeah, I expect Sasha Grove to light it up for Western this season. To be fair, I expect a fair few players to kind of just do what they do well. Like, I really want to see more of Carly Johnson this season. I think she's a fantastic player. I'm always happy to watch Chloe Lagazzo play football, so I'm really happy about that. And I'm really keen to see more of Catherine Zimmerman. I feel like injuries really mucked up her season last time out, so I'm really hoping that she can kind of be fully fit and maybe be that Hannah Keane bulk goal scoring kind of replacement for them. But no, there's a lot to like about Western, and I definitely think we'll be seeing them in the back end of the season.
Yeah, no, I absolutely think they'll be there and thereabouts again. And I think if they can be that side that, as I said earlier, competes in and around that top 4, but, like, takes that step up again, much like they did in their inaugural season, catch a couple of teams off guard, I think it's going to add a much needed spice to what is been a very bland top 4 in recent years, where it's just the same teams there and thereabouts, year after year. And so anything that can be done to spice up the back end of the season is only going to be a good thing for the A-League women's competition. This is where Marissa leaves us. Thank you so much for joining us for our mammoth 2-parter A-League women's preview. Before you go, do you have any final predictions for the season?
I've already said that City's probably winning a double of some description. I won't go any further than that. I realised, though, I wanted to say it while we were talking about Sydney, and I didn't. Mackenzie Hawkesby, Julie Dolan. There you go. You can take that one to the bank, friends.
Bank it. Let's go. Mackenzie Hawkesby, breakout season. Let's do it. Well, that is it for our A-League Women's 2-part preview. We hope you've enjoyed it. And on the other side, we will talk Matildas following their games against Switzerland and Germany. And we're back on the other side here to talk all things Matildas. Had 2 games over this international break, a 1-1 draw with Switzerland, the first ever time they've come up against the Swiss. And then a shock 2-1 win over Germany, the first time since 2005 that the Matildas have beaten the Germans, ruining Alex Pop's farewell. Although she did leave the pitch a winner, as when she exited in the 15th minute, it was a 1-0 scoreline to Germany before Kyra Cooney-Cross scored what might be the goal of the year, and Claire Hunt also got her first international goal. Like, this was completely unexpected result. Tom Samani now still the only coach to have beaten Germany as coach of the Matildas, which I don't quite know how I feel about that, given this happened, like, the first time it was all the way back in 2005, and here we are 19 years later, and Tom Samani is still the only coach who has figured out how to beat the Germans, albeit in a friendly, Burke.
Yeah, I think he might, whoever comes in, like as the official head coach, might need to ask him for some tips on Germany, because it seems, yeah, he's the guy. No one else can do it, just Tom Samani. I thought it was a really good game, just in general, not even as like a fan. I thought it was just a really good watch. Um, I think, yeah, obviously Kara had a fantastic game. That goal was insane. I like jumping on to record this was the first time I've stopped looking at it. That's all I've been doing all day on loop, just over and over. And I loved the video that the Matildas socials posted of her kind of deconstructing what happened in the moment. Just the completely dead voice where she goes, "They made a mistake. They did." And it was an incredible one to make, and not one I think they'll ever make again. You can't do that twice. But yeah, I loved her talking about how she'd done it so often in trainings, but she never really had the opportunity. But because she was freed from that dastardly role as a six, she could. So the moral of the story is let Kyra Cooney-Cross play attacking. Please let Claire Wheeler play defensive mid. Please.
Uh,
Please.
if there's one thing I've learned about you, Burke, in the entire time I've known you, is that you have a vendetta against the number 6 position on a football pitch.
The only thing I have against it is when it's being played by someone who is not a natural defensive mid. Because, like, I know they can do it. I know these attacking midfielders can do it, but oh my god, they shouldn't. Not when Claire Wheeler is right there. She's right there. And thank God she was there. No, I also think Maka had quite a good game as well. Obviously, the goal that was scored, I don't know if she could really do that much more than what she did. But she made some incredible saves. There was that one-handed save in the second half that was just unreal. I feel like following the Women's World Cup at like certain points, she's kind of, I guess, had a little bit of a dip in form, but for me at least, it definitely feels like she's back. But I do hope that in the coming international window, we do maybe get to see someone else between the sticks, just, because they've got to play eventually, right? Like, unfortunately, tragically, Mackenzie Arnold cannot play forever as much as I would like her to. They do need to get some runtime soon. Yeah, good to see also the new debut players as well. Those were very good. Winnie Heatley and Danny Galavich. Was it just the two of them? Yeah.
Yes, so Danielle Galich, cap number 229 in the game against Switzerland, and Winona Heatley, cap number 230 in the game against Germany, because B internationals do not count towards statistical records, which is why Sian Fryer does not have a goal for the Matildas, and why Winona Heatley officially became cap 230 this morning as we record this. It's interesting you mentioned the idea of wanting to see more players, particularly in the goalkeeper position, at the next international window, because we spoke about this when we finished recording last week, and I said if any player plays more than like 2 games across this 4-game series, then there's a serious problem. And I know that there's going to be fans who are going to be very disappointed to hear that. That's not to say that they will be capped, but like personally, I don't think we should be playing anyone more than 2 games in this window, just because a lot of these players are coming back from Europe. They need their rest. It's not fair to trot them out for 4 games, make them go through all the pre-game warm-up and everything else that comes with getting on to the pitch to play, even as a 10-minute substitute towards the end of the game. And Tom Samani also mentioned in his press conference that he was asked if he sees himself still being around, and he thinks that he probably will be, just because of the short gap in time between the 2 windows, unless the FA has someone sort of lined up, ready to go, and they were just waiting for this window to be over to announce it. So he thinks he'll be there. And if there's one thing we know about Tom Samani, is that he loves handing out a cheeky Matildas debut.
He does. And I really, no offense to No Football Australias, but I really hope they don't have a new coach in the wings just yet. I want Tom to throw out a few more of those caps, just so we can see what the new players, the younger players, have to show us. I think Danny Galich will become a very, very important player for the Matildas, just as soon as she kind of gets up to speed with the jump from club football to national team football.
Yeah, and Galich did mention that following the match. If I can find the quote here, I had to get stuck in pretty quickly, but it was definitely a step up, and I enjoyed every minute of it. She noted that there was quite a difference between what the pace of international football brings and her club football. So overall, I'd say 1 draw, 1 win, very successful window for the Matildas. The only real concern of note that I can think of, anyway, at least, Caitlin Torpey injured in around the 35th minute. I don't remember the exact time. Tom Samani post-game said that she sort of felt her hamstring begin to tighten up, thought she could play through it, and about 10-15 minutes later, it sort of went. She went down, was replaced by Michelle Heyman in the 37th minute. And Samani did say hamstring, but that they don't know the severity of it. And on one hand, you hate seeing players get injured. On the other hand, if there was ever a time for someone like Caitlin Torpey to get injured, the NWSL season is coming to an end. So she's probably not going to be playing any football for the next couple of months at the very least. So it gives her time to heal up.
Yeah, no, I was very annoyed seeing that happen, but you're definitely right about it being like a good time. Not that there's ever a good time, but like if there was a time, it'd be now. But yeah, I'm really hoping that Torpy can find a kind of period that she can go without injury, because it does feel like for a lot of recent time she's just kind of been out and in and out and in and out and in with injuries. So I'm hoping, fingers crossed, that this is the last for a very long time, because I would much rather see her on the pitch than on the sideline. But that's just me.
No, I think we all would very much enjoy that. I think this is one of the things we discussed off pod last week, and it's something we'll probably touch on in the coming weeks when the squad for the next window is announced. But are there any bolters that you would like to see in the next window get a call up?
Ooh, I don't think there is. I think I'd maybe be able to answer this question better, or actually have someone in mind after like round 1 of the dub, like just to see what kind of form everyone's in coming off the very long off season. So I think if you ask me that again, like in a week's time, I'll probably be able to tell you. But as of right now, there's no one that really springs to mind. No, not yet. What about you? Do you have any?
I do. For me, besides the obvious of Kayla Morrison, which we've all been campaigning for probably the last 20 months by everything that's going. For me, I want to see Sasha Grove. I think it's very much going to be an extended squad with the 4 games across in a very short span of time. So I'd imagine there'd be a couple of extra call-ups, train-on players, etc. I'd like to see Sasha Grove get a call up. I think when you look at just the year that she's had, she performed very well in an underperforming Canberra United side. I know she did get injured a little bit. Did get the call up to the Under-20s World Cup. Had a fantastic Under-20s Asian Cup. And she's just one of these players that constantly performs above her level. The only thing that I could see that would stop her from getting a national team call up, even just as some sort of a train-on player, is that you've already got Steph Catley, you've already got Ellie Carpenter, who they're not going anywhere, and behind those two already, you've got Courtney Nevin, Charlie Grant, and then you've got someone like Caitlin Torpy who can play everywhere, albeit who is injured at the moment. So there are some very impressive names ahead of her that she has to get in front of. But I think seeing her at least as a train-on player like Danny Gallich was earlier this year ahead of the Asian Cup, I think is something I would very much like to see.
Yeah, no, that's a good shout for Sasha Grove, actually. And given that the games are all in Australia, yeah, having a bunch of train-on players would be probably the smartest thing to do. You may as well expose as many of them as you can to the Matildas environment, even if it is for a short period of time and they don't actually, see the pitch.
Hello everyone, producer Lockie here. It appears, as much to my surprise that it is yours, that's where we'll be ending today's episode. Poletti and Burke appear to have had some connection issues, so a little bit of an abrupt end, but we hope you enjoyed a big feature-length kind of preview, of course, for the A-League Women's season and a review of the Matildas' performances throughout the week. So we appreciate you listening to the show very much. Of course, if you want to learn a little bit more in-depth about every club, we have our written previews going live on roundballaustralia.com.au over the course of the week, leading up, of course, to the competition kicking off on Friday night. It's very exciting. But we thank you very much for listening, and the crew will see you next week. Goodbye.